Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 9 to be perfectly exact. And I'm your host, as usual, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at thisisinfamousjoeblow.com and, of course, right here at our home base of Just the Worst Podcast. URL will be up soon, so don't worry about that. So justtheworstpodcast.com. Keep an eye out. I have been assured, as every single week before, that it is being built. So worry not. It is on the way. Just a little bit more patience. I promise. It is coming. Week in and week out, what we like to do here on the show is like to dive right into the movie industry, right into Hollywood, figure out the biggest things that have been going on over the past week, and talk about them, put them into context, give you a different perspective, maybe my opinion, which could gel or not with yours, and let you know whether or not something is or is not important, but at least discuss it in a meaningful and intelligent way, and in a way that may talk you off the ledge here or there. Or may put you right back up. So that's kind of the way that we operate from story to story. So it is what it is. But we're gonna jump right in as we usually do, and as it seems to be every single week for the last few weeks, and every single week as we move forward towards the end of the week, it looks like it's gonna be nothing but Star Wars. Talking about Star Wars, lots and lots of Star Wars, wars amongst the stars. Yeah, I just dropped that on you right there. You like that? I thought so. So actually, today, as we record this on Veterans Day, that doesn't mean you had to listen on Veterans Day. It's just that's when it is right now. On Veterans Day, basically a gigantic information dump of Star Wars images, of Star Wars behind the scenes information and tidbits. No real full-blown spoilers, but probably more than anyone should really want to see this close to the release. I mean, look, we are just over 1 month out from getting this thing in full. The whole thing. All of it. Episode 7 in its entirety. We're going to get it all. From start to finish. Beginning to end. Top to bottom. Why at this point do you want to know everything or see everything? Why not leave something to the imagination? Why not leave something unspoiled? Why not leave some of your Christmas presents a surprise? So that when you get to Christmas morning, or in this case, December 18th, or the 17th at night, whenever you get to see it, and you look under the tree and you see some wrapped gifts, there are some that you don't know what they are. There are some that when you start just tearing away at the paper and tossing the bow over your head and just getting into what is this, you don't have to pretend. You don't already know. Look, I was a kid once. I could hardly contain my excitement when the holidays came around. I did my fair share of snooping. Because I just wanted to know. Oh, I wanted to know. The difference was that I was like 10 or 11 or 12 or 16. Now, as a grown adult, there are certain joys that I would like to try and maintain. And one of them, as I've said week in and week out, is the experience of Star Wars. I would like to be able to walk into a theater and know as little as possible for this new adventure to surprise me. to keep me on my toes, to keep me guessing, to have me in a position where I don't know where we're going. And not in a spot where I feel like I have to be smarter than the movie because, I saw that coming already because I watched this trailer, or I saw this image, or I saw this TV spot, or I read up on this, or I read up on that. There's no reason to do that anymore. I mean, there was no reason to do this along the way. I understand wanting to consume something along the way. You're hungry for Star Wars. I understand that. The first time we had Star Wars in a really long time, you're just hungry. You need something to just fill that pit in your belly that's just grumbling around. Star Wars. You're starving for information. So you get a teaser trailer. Just enough to whet the appetite. You get a full trailer. Just enough to make your mouth start to water. And it's not like these are advertisements that are being put out there to lure you in. You're already going. Some of you already have your tickets purchased. When December 18th rolls around, your ass will be in a seat to watch Star Wars The Force Awakens. So why cheat yourself? Why jump the gun ahead of time for something you're already sure of? This isn't one of those things where like you need to watch more of, to convince yourself. Well, I'm not really sure. I'm still on the fence about going to see this Star Wars thing. Let me keep watching some things, and maybe at one point along the way, I'll be convinced. I'll be sold on this. Yeah, maybe this thing's for me. It is for you. It's for you. It's for your friends. It's for your family. It's for your kids if you got them. For your little cousins. For your buddies. It's for everybody. If you're a Star Wars fan, you're going. So there's no need to watch every little thing, to get every little tidbit, to try and consume every last bit when we're almost at the finish line. This is like running a marathon. And as you get into the last mile, you try and cheat. Well, I did all this work and we made it this far, but I just can't wait to get to the last mile, so I'll just cheat. There's a sense of accomplishment of getting all the way there. Of witnessing it firsthand in all of its glory. So every last thing of Star Wars that comes out that we just continue to pour over, just leave it alone. At this point, just leave it alone. Because otherwise, when will it end? Where does it stop? Are you going to be analyzing everything right up to the second that you get to see it? And then kicking it into hyperdrive once you've already seen it? What does this mean? What does that mean? Just write it out right now. Write it out. You got 1 month. Write it out. You're going to see it. Let the excitement just kind of fester. And sit there and build right in your heart. When you just can't stand it. You got the goosebumps. You're feeling good. Let that be. Because you're not feeding it in a healthy way. You're binging on it in a way that actually might make you sick of Star Wars by the time you get there. And avoid the Entertainment Weekly thing. Just avoid it. You want to pick up a copy and read it on like December 19th or December 20th? go ahead. Stick it in a drawer, put it away, forget that it's there for the next month. Because right now, you don't want it. You don't need it. You don't need to see everything. Just leave it alone. You'd be better off. And that includes the TV spots, the international trailer. Just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Look away. Check out something else. Because it's not helping you. It's not really hurting you either, but it's just don't do it to yourself, man. Don't do it to yourself. All right, there are some interesting Star Wars things to talk about, though, that are meaningful. And here's one of the things, and it kind of speaks to what I was talking about here. There's a really good interview with J.J. Abrams in Wired, where he kind of talks about the process and where Star Wars is going. Not spoilerific way of where it's going. But where we're headed next. As far as the creative direction. Who's in charge? Behind the scenes. Who's handling story? Who's handling episode 8? Who's handling episode 9? So I pulled some quotes from the article, from the interview, because I thought they were interesting to discuss and kind of put into context how this machine is operating moving forward. So first is talking about what I was talking about, how much we know. So Abrams says, quote, "There's a really positive side to keeping quiet. You can protect the audience from spoilers or certain moments that, in a way, obviate the movie experience. But on the other hand, you risk being seen as a coy or as a withholding shithead. That's never my intent. But I don't want to destroy too many illusions. We're walking a tightrope. If you fall on one side, it's no good because we're showing too much. If you fall on the other side, it's no good because we're not showing anything and we look like arrogant jerks. When it came to marketing, I was expecting Disney to want to put out an overabundance of material, but they've been incredibly reluctant to do that. They want this thing to be an experience for people when they go to see the film, and I'm grateful for that." And if you've heard any of these episodes of the show where I talk about this, I couldn't agree more with Abrams. Star Wars The Force Awakens should be an experience for people when they go to see the film. When you put your butt in a chair at the movie theater, you should be ready for something special to come up on the screen. Something you don't see coming. Something you're very much in the dark on. And I will commend Disney for what they have done at this point. They have shown very little. I think the EW thing pushed it to another level. But prior to that, when you're watching the trailers, I think there's enough to get you excited. There's enough to get you juiced up to see this, without showing you too much. Even the things that you have seen that felt cool and that may have pushed a line, pushed the envelope into too much territory, I get the feeling that when all is said and done and we really see how this whole thing is laid out, it's just a drop in a bucket. Just a really small thing. Probably something earlier on in the film. Nothing really too far along that would spoil the experience for us. And look, I will give Abrams credit this time. I think he's learned from Star Trek, particularly Star Trek Into Darkness, where they tried to maintain certain secrets that weren't secrets. But a lot of that was based off of people's knowledge of Star Trek before. Here, there is knowledge of Star Wars before, but we're not hearkening back to previous episodes. Granted, there are characters that we've spent a lot of time with, but we're not copying anything. This is all something new. This is all fresh. This is all uncharted and unexplored territory for Star Wars fans. We don't know what we're getting. We don't know what story is being told. And we're still trying to figure out what the world is that we're living in as it pertains to this. What does this galaxy look like post Return of the Jedi? What do these characters look like 30 years later? Where are they in their lives? So there's a built-in mystery because it's all new. We don't know these things. As opposed to Star Trek Into Darkness, where clearly they were calling back on Wrath of Khan and previous Star Trek canon. So I think you show enough to get people excited, and then you hold off. You hold back. Like a Christopher Nolan film. When Christopher Nolan gives you a trailer, you get just enough to be like, that looks interesting. I want to see it. But you never get the whole shebang. You never walk into a Christopher Nolan film feeling like you know everything. Feeling like you've already seen the movie. And as a result, you get an experience to throw yourself into. Which is what all these things should be. Star Wars especially. So right there, I'm with you, J.J. Abrams, as far as the marketing is concerned. I know there was a lot of concern from Disney that they just show too much. I feel like we're getting a little bit more than we should the closer we get. Because once again, they're trying to reach non-Star Wars fans, and that's just the way the world is right now. As far as advertising to the masses. Go out and show them everything as much as possible so that they come in. But I don't even know that that's necessary. I think at this point, this thing is going to be one of those cultural phenomenons that everyone wants to be a part of. Excuse me. That everyone wants to feel like they've experienced. No one wants to be left out of the loop. Everyone's going to be talking about this. And whether you've seen previous Star Wars movies or not, this is a fresh starting point to go forward with. So you don't have to watch the previous films. I mean, it's probably best if you do, but you don't have to in order to know where we are right now. Because it's new. It's new story. It's new advancement. We're going forward. So if you just jump in right now, I don't think you'll be lost. I think you won't get the full picture. But I think it's a good starting point to at least look at it and say, all right, we're picking up right from here. New characters that I might be able to gravitate towards. That's the beauty of what they're doing now. Whether or not they get them, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get those people. But we've been in a situation before where people felt the need to jump in to something because they didn't want to feel like they were missing out. They watched the finale of Breaking Bad without having seen any of Breaking Bad. Why? Because they didn't want to feel left out of the conversation. They go and watch the last Twilight movie or the last Harry Potter movie without seeing any of the previous films. Why? Because they don't want to feel left out of the conversation. These are big things that are happening, and even though they might not be a part of the fandom, they don't want to feel left out. That's what Star Wars The Force Awakens is going to be for a lot of these people, as well as a potential jumping off point for them to now get locked into the future of Star Wars, the present and future of Star Wars. But for those of us who are already in, just look away. Look away as best you can. All right, there are a couple other things that J.J. Abrams had to talk about in regards to future episodes, where we're moving forward with this core saga trilogy, episodes 7, 8, and 9, starting with The Force Awakens and moving forward with the Rian Johnson film, episode 8, and also episode 9, which Colin Trevorrow will be handling. So, speaking on episode number 8, Abrams had to say, quote, "The script for 8 is written. I'm sure rewrites are going to be endless like they always are, but what Lawrence Kasdan and I did was set up certain key relationships, certain key questions, conflicts, and we know where certain things were going. We had meetings with Ryan and Ram Bergman, the producer of 8. They were watching dailies when we were shooting our movie. We wanted them to be part of the process to make the transition to their film as seamless as possible. I showed Ryan an early cut of the movie because I knew he was doing his rewrite and prepping, and as executive producer of 8, I need that movie to be really good. Withholding serves no one and certainly not the fans. So we've been as transparent as possible. Ryan has asked for a couple of things here and there that he needs for his story. He's an incredibly accomplished filmmaker and an incredibly strong writer. So the story he told took what we were doing and went in the direction that he felt was best. But that is very much in line with what we were thinking as well. But you're right. That will be his movie. He's going to do it in the way he sees fit. He's neither asking for nor does he need me to oversee the process. So for those of you who are wondering how hands-on J.J. Abrams will be moving forward, the answer is quite clear. Not at all. Will he be there in the event that his help is asked for? That Rian Johnson or Colin Trevorrow reach out for some advice, be it storytelling or whatnot, much in the way that Marvel did with Joss Whedon, where someone would maybe hit a snag and call upon Whedon and say, hey, do you have any ideas? That's something that is more fit for Abrams. But as far as we're seeing right now, this is very much a collaborative effort. We already know about this grand creative committee that exists in order to make sure everything is canon, everything sticks to the canon, everything supports the canon, everything comes together for the canon. But as far as creating the canon is concerned, this is a collaborative effort moving forward to tell a connected story across 3 films by 3 different filmmakers. For J.J. Abrams to hand over the saga to Rian Johnson between Star Wars The Force Awakens and the untitled Episode 8. And for Rian Johnson to be able to go back to J.J. Abrams and say, hey, we need a couple things in order to proceed with our film to connect them better. And for Abrams to concede that and say, sure, absolutely, that's a positive sign for Star Wars. And what it does is it lets you know that these aren't just directors executing someone else's vision. They're involved in the creative process. Rian Johnson is being given some degree of freedom here to be able to craft episode 8 the way he wants. And I would imagine when we get towards episode 9 and Colin Trevorrow, he'll have that as well. His may be a little bit more tightly formed. May have to thread the needle a little more finely because we're talking about wrapping all of this up. But if you were to look at this previously and say, well, I'm pretty sure this thing's going to be mapped out for the next 3 films by J.J. Abrams, you would be incorrect. There are 3 different filmmakers. There are writing staff. There's a creative committee. There are a lot of people in here who are making sure this thing is carefully done correctly. But it's not being micromanaged along the way. This is something that they're making sure these films are good, but they have the confidence in these filmmakers, in these storytellers who have created good films in the past to do that again as they explore their own love and passion for Star Wars. That's a positive step. That's something optimistic to hold on to. To say these individuals are working together to make the best thing possible. Egos are being pushed aside. They're giving each other the support needed to make this good. Because they know the pressure that comes with this. They don't want to be the ones who are looked at and say they failed Star Wars. They let Star Wars down. George Lucas has that on his shoulders after all these prequels. People who look at it and say, oh, George Lucas ruined Star Wars. They don't want to be known as ones who put a dent in that Star Wars armor moving forward when everyone's so enthusiastic and optimistic and hopeful once again. They want to be known as the storytellers who helped contribute to a positive legacy for Star Wars. And in doing this, in working together, they share in this responsibility. It's not just on one person. It's on all of them together. To pull it all together. Pull all their strengths together. Help each other's weaknesses to make the best thing possible. That's something to be hopeful about. That's something to keep your head held high about. That's where, when December rolls around, once again, a little bit more than a month to go, that we can feel good about. That we can watch this movie together as a Star Wars fan community. And if it delivers, we can look to our neighbor to the left and to the right and say, you know what? I think we're going to be okay. I think this is all going to be okay. So we have that to hold on to. A couple big trailers hit this week to discuss. And, I mean, they are what they are. But the one would be for Duncan Jones' adaptation of World of Warcraft, simply known as Warcraft. And after taking a look at this thing, this trailer, this teaser, for what should be a sizable movie in the blockbuster landscape next summer, it's really hard for me to make heads or tails of what the hell I'm looking at. You know, maybe this is that teaser that's just supposed to get the fandom excited, the people that devoted hours upon hours upon hours to playing World of Warcraft. But as someone who's never touched it, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. And being that it's a film that's going to require some type of crossover audience, some mainstreaming in order for it to be successful, I don't know that this was the right first step. It's a lot of cool looking stuff, but it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I think that's a little bit of a trouble spot that Duncan Jones and Universal have to face here in Legendary. Is how do you make this thing mainstream? How do you make it for everybody? And not just the Warcraft players. I mean, you could go to the Warner Brothers playbook and figure out how they were able to sell the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy to mainstream audiences who may not have read the books, who may not have been Tolkien fans, but people who embrace fantasy. I don't know that there was anything too exciting right out of the gate here that would say, yeah, I gotta see this. So I think that was a gross misstep in the first impression for Warcraft, is that it felt kind of underwhelming. Lots of cool visuals, but beyond that, not much for me to really sink my teeth into and say, man, I can't wait for that movie to come around. The other trailer that hit was the teaser trailer for the Alice in Wonderland sequel, Alice Through the Looking Glass, which I could give two shits about. Now I understand, look, I understand that there are people who went out and watched Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. A lot of people watched it. That is $1 billion movie. I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that Alice in Wonderland is a $1 billion movie. When you go through the annals of cinematic history and you come across movies that hit the $1 billion milestone, the box office $1 billion milestone, Alice in Wonderland is on that list. Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides is also on that list, which makes you know that a $1 billion movie isn't all that it's cracked up to be, as it once was. But notwithstanding, it's still quite an achievement to hit $1 billion. Not everything can hit $1 billion. That's a lot of money around the world. I mean, just think of like $1 billion. And Alice in Wonderland is there. So of course we're back at it again. We're back for a sequel. We're doing it again. Johnny Depp back as the Mad Hatter again. And I know a lot of people saw Alice in Wonderland because the numbers dictate that. But I have never met anyone who is like, I love that movie. What a great movie. I can't wait to watch it over and over again. Once again, one of those phenomenon that people feel the need to get involved with. And because it's family fare, it makes it easier. I remember watching Alice in Wonderland and nearly falling asleep. like watching the movie through my 3D glasses, like half awake, like with my eyes like fighting me, like, no, we're going to bed. And me being like, no, I have to watch it and see what it is. So we're doing it again. Alice Through the Looking Glass, which looks like more of the same. So guess what? If you were one of these fans of Alice in Wonderland who I have yet to come upon in real life, people who are vehemently strong supporters of Alice in Wonderland, congratulations. You're getting more of the same. On the other hand, if you don't like it, if you're not a fan, now you know to just stay the hell away from it. You already know what you got the first time around. You paid your money. You were like, I'm curious. You walked out. You said, I don't know what the hell this Mad Hatter dance is. What did I just watch? Oh, it's too late. They already got my cash. Well, now you can hold on to your cash. Because in looking at the Alice Through the Looking Glass teaser trailer, it just looks like more of the same. It looks a little darker, but doesn't look like anything that I am anticipating or eager to see. Let's put it that way. Another interesting development is going on over at Sony. Now that we got through those trailers. And that is sort of a reboot / retooling of the Millennium series. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what the Millennium series in, that would be the Lisbeth Salander series that starts with the girl with the dragon tattoo. Novels were written by Stieg Larsson, 3 of them, and they are known as the Millennium series. So, as we know, a couple years ago, David Fincher jumped into this and adapted the first book in the series. They'd already been made in Sweden. I believe there's the 3 films. The trilogy is already made in Sweden with Noomi Rapace, who is now made her way back over to America now to act. Not back over. She just made her way here. But that's where she started. And David Fincher jumped in to make an Americanized version that starred Rooney Mara as Lisbeth Salander and Daniel Craig as Mikael Blomkvist, who is I think he's a detective. I don't remember all that well. But so when Fincher makes this movie, the budget is ridiculous. Like, it's like a $90 million movie. A $90 million R-rated drama / somewhat thriller, I guess, that did okay at the box office. I mean, it did well enough, but not well enough for a movie that's coming in at about $90 million. I don't even know where the money went. Like, if you were to watch the movie, you know, it's a nice looking movie, but it's not a movie that has large special effects. It's really quite simple. So once The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo came and went, and really, I think it was positioned in December, I believe. Not really a holiday movie. Might have done better at a different point on the calendar. But Sony just kind of flubbed it a little bit, and as a result, probably just didn't perform as well as it could and probably should have. And so as a result, this thing's been sitting on the shelf for a while. The series has been sitting on the shelf for a while, and it's a series that has done really well, especially when you look at the books. People have read these books to great number. So to kind of have to shelve this series after the first one, not a good piece of business over there for Sony. So I believe the talent was contractually obligated to move forward. So you had Rooney Mara, you had Daniel Craig, you had options on Fincher if you really wanted. But with that being said, I think Sony was kind of gun shy, much like they were with Spider-Man after Spider-Man 3. They were looking to kind of scale down, kind of downsize, strip it down and say, how do we make it so that it's not a $90 million movie? And the answer seems to be to kind of reboot this thing. So what they're looking to do right now is to jump back into the Lisbeth Salander series, but not do it in a chronological order. What they're looking to do right now is to take The Girl in the Spider's Web, which is the 4th book in the series, the book that was written by David Lagerkrantz after Stieg Larsson died, the first book after he died, that kind of continues the story of Lisbeth Salander and Mikael Blomkvist, and use that as the picking up point post Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Use this and then move forward with the rest of the other 2 books to have The Girl Who Played with Fire 3rd as opposed to 2nd. And in doing so, they would be able to recast, to use another star, with Alicia Vikander being the top name being circulated right now, but to use someone else and distance themselves from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo without really pretending that it didn't exist. So they're doing something else while not acknowledging its existence. So The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo will be there, will move forward with these characters, but it'll look different, it'll feel different, it'll be something else. So The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo will still be on the record, but we're just now moving forward with these characters in a totally different way. They'll look different, they'll sound different, they'll feel a little bit different, but they'll still somewhat be consistent to the Millennium series. So Stephen Knight, who did Locke and Burnt, has been brought in to write the script for The Girl in the Spider's Web. They do have the Steve Zalian script that they paid a shitload of money for years ago for The Girl Who Played with Fire. So that could be a starting point if they want. And this will be their solution to not having to bury this whole thing. They'll be able to kick it back up, they'll run it on the fly, and they will have the Millennium series back up and running, just under new management. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think there's money to be made here for Sony with this series, if done correctly. They have to manage it and keep it under control. They can't just hand it over to somebody and say, go crazy. But they've freed up some ability to do something fresh and new with this without being locked into what they had previously set up with Fincher and Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara. So kudos to Sony for at least being creative here in keeping this thing alive. Now it's just going to be interesting as to whether or not they can make it work. There's popularity in this series. It's now just a matter of putting the right pieces in the right places to set it up to succeed and not to just kind of be okay. Do I want to talk James Bond? I guess we could talk James Bond. I guess we could talk 007 and the palpable sense of disappointment that James Bond fans everywhere seem to be going through right now. Let's face it, Spectre, not the James Bond people were hoping it was going to be. Does it have a share of fans? Of course, every movie has its share of fans. Even the really terrible ones, somebody out there likes them. They look at it and they go, this is great. But there's a certain expectation that gets laid out when you have a James Bond movie, when you have a 007 movie. Given that this series has been up and running for 50 plus years, this is the 24th film. And look, when you have that many films, it's impossible to bat 1,000. You can't bat 1,000. Even batting 500 with that many films, I would say is tough. 40%, I think, is more of an achievable goal, an achievable number. 40% of James Bond films should be better than average. It means good and above. Good to excellent. Good to great. Spectre, not in that 40%. Not at all. And, you could check out Just the Worst Movie Review Podcast, the last episode. Episode number 8. Actually, that's not true. That'd be episode number 6. I had Alonso Duralde on, and we talked Spectre in depth. So make sure you look that one up and check that one out. But I understand the disappointment. I didn't like the film. I thought it was a subpar James Bond film. I thought it was a subpar Daniel Craig James Bond film. And arguably, kind of neck and neck with Quantum of Solace as far as which Daniel Craig James Bond film is the worst of the Craig era. And I'm not someone who was crazy, who went nuts for Skyfall. I think Skyfall's okay. But there's been a lot of soul searching amongst James Bond fans this past few days over what does this mean. I mean, the box office was solid for Spectre, but that doesn't always mean something. When things seem creatively dead or stagnant, and that's when the studios tend to really take a hard look at what's going on. And I don't know that they're going to do that. I mean, this is all Eon, of course, and the Broccoli's who own James Bond. MGM has it and Sony distributes it. But for the most part, how James Bond operates is done in-house. And I don't necessarily know that they feel the need to do a lot of introspection here and say, what does this mean? The fans, I think, are doing that more for them. And, as I could have told you heading in, this was going to be Sam Mendes' last go. He wasn't going to hang around for a third film. He didn't really even want to hang around for a second film. He was out the door. And because of the strength of Skyfall and how well it performed and how much the fandom seemed to really love it, they came banging on Sam Mendes' door, begging and pleading for him to come back for one more film. And he did. They waited for him. They pushed their initial schedule back. And I think it was a mistake for everyone. So Mendes has even commented he's done. He's not doing any more James Bonds. He's out. He's out. What do we do with Daniel Craig, though? Here's my take on Daniel Craig. I still do not believe that Daniel Craig has gotten one completely solid James Bond film under his belt. I think Casino Royale was the closest, and that was the first one. And I think ever since then, it's kind of been downhill. He's got one more on his contract, I believe. They believe he's coming back for one more, regardless of what he says. Every time he does a film, he's like, I'm done with James Bond. Because they're grueling films. They're intensive physical films that you have to really dive into both emotionally and physically in order to pull this off. And I don't know that as soon as one's done, when everybody asks him, oh, what are you going to do next? I don't think he's ready to get back in that headspace right away. What's a break? What's a vacation? Let him have some beach time. Throw back a few drinks before he has to get into the thought process of going back to being 007. I do think he's going to get one more. The question coming out of Spectre now, though, is where creatively does it go? You know, do they continue to proceed with the threads they went out with on Spectre? Kind of making some of that stuff part of the new canon, at least as far as the Craig films, making it tie back into kind of the serial process, this connective tissue that James Bond hadn't really experienced up until kind of now, this modern arc that kicked off with Daniel Craig and Martin Campbell's Casino Royale. I don't know. And you can't really reboot it too much, because if in one film you're going to have to replace Daniel Craig and call upon a new James Bond, how much retooling and retweaking do you want to do? You know, I think Spectre leaves the door open to be able to move on from Daniel Craig, to be able to move on to a new James Bond, if that's the decision. But I would really like for Craig to have the opportunity to go out on that high note that nobody seems to get when they wrap up their run as 007. I think he's been really good as James Bond. I think the films haven't served that entirely well. I think he has been better than the films most of the time. And I would like to see him go back for one more go around and have that shot to kind of leave on a high note. But with that said, story-wise, considering the disappointment that fans have with Spectre and how the organization was used, how this secret twist involving Blofeld was used, spoiler alert, I don't know that moving down that same path is the right way to go, considering how vehemently fans rejected it. They may come out in droves at the box office, but when they left, they weren't happy with what they got. So I think they're between a rock and a hard place right now with Daniel Craig as James Bond, because the easy call would be to just move forward with what you have. But when what you have isn't working, do you want to do so much of a renovation when he's only got one film to go? That's why I don't get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. Somebody does. They're going to have to figure it out, because it's a really tight rope they're going to have to walk right now. A very fine line they have to figure out creatively for the future 007. And I'm sure we'll find out sooner or later, because they're going to have to get a jump on it. They like to get 007 out every 2 years as best they can. And once they get settled in with their next studio, they're going to have to get in on that process and figure out, is Craig the way to go? Is somebody else the way to go? And if Craig is their guy for one more film, if they still got a little more juice to squeeze out of that berry, what is the right call to make moving ahead? because I don't think it's the status quo. All right, one more piece of business before we get out of here. Going to move on to this week's Just the Worst news item. And that would have to deal with this reveal of information regarding the Harry Potter spinoff. It's a prequel of sorts because it takes place before the Harry Potter books / films, but it's not really a prequel because it tells a different story. So it's more a spinoff. But this has to do with the reveal for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which right now feels a lot like The Hobbit. When Guillermo del Toro was first doing The Hobbit, people were kind of interested. And then once Peter Jackson took over and it became this thing where they were going to do more than one film, people just got tired of Middle-earth. They just got tired of being there. They got tired of the story. They got tired of it just being extended. They were just weary of this whole thing, just worn down by Middle-earth and dwarves and orcs and elves and wizards and hobbits. They were just worn down. And I understand that Warner Brothers likes to make money. I understand that J.K. Rowling is all about making money. You know, they got a new stage play, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, on the way. This is their new entry into the film division, branching off for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. But just the way it's been handled feels so underwhelming. It feels like there's no excitement for this. And the way that it was revealed, just kind of like with an Entertainment Weekly cover and then some information dropped, kind of some images and a plot synopsis, it didn't seem like anybody cared. Which is strange because the Potterheads are really, really diehard. Just this weekend, I finally made it up to Universal Studios Orlando. I finally got to dip into the wizarding world of Harry Potter for the Diagon Alley half. I'd already been to Hogsmeade a number of times, but this is the first time I had a chance to get into Diagon Alley, and I was really impressed with just the scope of it. I mean, this thing was way bigger than Diagon Alley. Than Hogsmeade was. And, you know, you go in there and everybody's in it. Whether you're a casual fan, a hardcore fan, everybody's in it. And the hardcore fans are really in it. So for the hardcore fans to kind of really be like, meh, just kind of like, whatever, indifferent to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I mean, that's not a good sign. And then there was the criticism of what Muggles are referred to in the United States, which kind of just shows like where this fandom is at. So it's been released that they call them just No-Maj. Instead of Muggles, they're No-Maj. No magic, no Maj. And fans looked at this and they said, this is stupid. And because you're going into this uncharted territory, these unexplored waters, you know, you adapt the films, the first 8 films from the 7 books, the 7 J.K. Rowling books, and you know there's some criticism levied upon them because certain things are left out, certain things aren't as intensive, but by and large, fans were very happy with the films that resulted from the source material. This is something entirely else. This is something plucked from a small detail in the Potterverse that now has to live up to the quality standards that the Potter films set already. And going back towards something like the Star Wars prequels, this is where the fandom, which has devoted a lot of time and energy and money to the cause, is going to be hypercritical of things that are created in the aftermath. They don't want to feel like the Potter thing is cheapened or just a cash-in. They want to feel like it is still an extension of the thing that they love. So, you know, I just thought the rollout, and I'll read you the synopsis really quick because it really doesn't do any much to incite enthusiasm either. So here we go. It's eccentric magizoologist Newt Scamander, Oscar winner Eddie Redmayne, comes to New York for a reason we won't disclose with his trusty weathered case. This case is one of those way, way, way bigger on the inside magical devices, and within are expansive habitats for a collection of rare and endangered magical creatures from Newt's travels around the globe. He discovers the American wizarding community is fearfully hiding from muggles, who are called no-maj in the States, and the threat of public exposure is an even graver concern than in the UK. Fantastic Beasts is the story of what happens when this uniquely skilled English wizard travels to whiz-phobic America and a variety of his creatures, some quite dangerous, get out of their case. Sounds like Jumanji. Sounds like Goosebumps. Sounds like something I've already seen without really a fresh spin on it. I mean, at least the Potter was just good versus evil. Very Star Wars in its essence. But this doesn't really do anything to blow up your skirt. Set your world on fire. Feels very underwhelming. Feels very just kind of plain. And I think this is going to be a tougher road than they originally thought it was going to be by just kind of pulling out of the Potter universe. Those Potter fans are hardcore. If you don't live up to the standard of Harry Potter, you're going to be in trouble. And I can't remember seeing any real hardcore Potter fans going crazy for what they're seeing with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them right now. And for that, some of this news, just the worst. Not really positive. All right, that's it. No, that's the show. That's the podcast in a nutshell. Actually, not in a nutshell. That's the whole thing. So I want to thank you for, once again, coming back and joining us for one of these podcasts, for streaming, downloading, however it is that you got here. Greatly appreciate it. Very thankful for it. So thanks for spending your time here with me as we went through some of the news of the week. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly. You can find me on Twitter at InfamousKid, as well as on Facebook, facebook.com/BillyTheKid. You can find Just the Worst Podcast there as well. On Twitter at JTW Podcast, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Just the Worst Podcast. URL is going up, so in the meantime, you might just want to bookmark justtheworstpodcast.com. And of course, you could find us at SoundCloud, all the episodes, all the shows, Just the Worst Podcast, the wrestling podcast, the movie review podcast. They're all there for you to make sure you check out. But if you follow us along social media, then by all means you can be notified every time one of these new shows goes up. So keep an eye out for that. And once the URL is set, all your iTunes, your Stitcher, your RSS feeds, all that will be set up for your convenience. So just bear with us just a little bit longer. I have been assured that it is on the way. So just a little while longer. Just patience is a virtue, I understand. So just hold on just a little bit tight. Other than that, that's it for the show. We'll be out of here right now. Come make sure you check back next week for a brand new episode. This is Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 9. And I'm your host, Bill Donnelly. Saying see ya. I'm out. Peace. Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 9, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast.